Okay. I'm Bill Gibbons. I'm Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security. I want to thank you for being here today. I want to especially recognize all of our local law enforcement partners who are here with us today, and we appreciate very much your presence and the partnership that we have with you. I also want to recognize representatives of AAA here today. They have been very much in the forefront of advocating seatbelt usage in our state, and we appreciate our partnership with them as well. Today we want to talk a little bit about the new increased seatbelt fines that will take place as of January 1st of 2016 due to action by the General Assembly during the past session. For the first offense, seatbelt fines will go up from $10 to $25. For second and subsequent offenses, it will go up from $20 to $50. And we believe this will be an added tool in the toolbox for law enforcement to make our roadways safer. So far this year, we have lost over 300 lives on our roadways in Tennessee because people chose not to wear their seatbelts. They made that bad choice. During this holiday season and throughout the year, we think it is vitally important to continue to make safe choices when traveling our roadways or wherever our citizens may be traveling. Now, Colonel Trott and I have talked a lot about our focus on reducing traffic fatalities in our state by having data-driven deployment of our state troopers to try to make sure our state troopers are in the right places at the right times to have the maximum impact on traffic fatalities, on serious crashes, through seatbelt enforcement, DUI enforcement, and so on. So far this year, state troopers have issued over 107,000 seatbelt citations. That's a 255% increase over the same time period in 2010, and reflects the proactive stance we're taking and reflects that data-driven deployment of our troopers that I mentioned. We're going to continue to make this a priority, but we hope the day will come. We hope the day will come when it will be difficult for a state trooper or a local law enforcement officer to find a motorist not wearing a seatbelt. Now, we're not there yet, which is why it's important that we continue to emphasize seatbelt enforcement. We're going to continue to deploy our troopers on a data-driven basis and be proactive in our seatbelt enforcement. And we think this increase in seatbelt fines will be that added tool that we need in the toolbox to encourage more motorists to use their seatbelts. Director Poole, you're going to hear from him in a few minutes, and he's going to give you a few stats on the number of motorists, the percentage of motorists in Tennessee who are not wearing their seatbelts, and the percentage of traffic fatalities they account for. What we want to do is reduce that percentage and encourage even more citizens in our state to be wearing their seatbelts on a regular basis. The bottom line is, with these tougher fines, it's not our goal to simply issue more seatbelt citations. It's not our goal to have more motorists having to pay additional fines. And by the way, none of these fines come to the Department of Safety and Homeland Security or the Highway Patrol. All this fine money goes to the state general fund. So we're not benefiting anyway as a result of this fine increase. But our bottom line goal is to encourage citizens to obey the law. That's really what we want to happen as a result of our proactive enforcement and the increase in fines. Under Governor Haslam's administration, we've made a lot of progress in reducing the number of traffic fatalities. Things are looking pretty good this year, although it's not as good as we hope. We are still above the national average in the number of traffic fatalities we have in our state, and our goal is to keep reducing it. And that will continue to be a priority of this administration. I'm proud of the efforts of the Highway Patrol under the direction of Colonel Trott. We have saved lives on Tennessee's roadways. Our troopers are committed to making sure our citizens arrive at their destinations safely. We want to encourage all citizens to wear those seat belts, to drive safely, especially during this holiday season, but of course every day. With that, what I'd like to do is call on Colonel Tracy Trott, head of the Highway Patrol, to make a few comments. He will then be followed by Kendall Poole, who is Director of the Governor's Highway Safety Office, and then we'll be glad to take any questions that you have. Before I begin, I want to say thank you to the local law enforcement that's here with us today. And I want to also say thank you to the local media. Nowhere in the state do we get more support from our media partners and our local law enforcement than we do in the Knoxville district. So I want to thank you for the way you've helped us achieve some of our goals this year. The seatbelt fine increase is meant for one thing and one thing only, to save lives. We are trying to increase our voluntary compliance. We would like to come to a day when we didn't have to write 107,000 tickets to enforce the seatbelt law. And we hope that the fine increase helps us along that way. Our compliance rate is now just a little bit above 86%. We really need to be in the mid-90s to be a really safe state. And with an increased fine, we hope that the educational process that we're going through, which this press conference is part of that process, and the enforcement that will follow, will encourage more people to wear their seatbelts, up our compliance rate, which ultimately will drive our fatality rate down. We've had great success over the last 4 or 5 years driving our fatality rate down with enforcement and education. In 2010, 54% of our fatalities were unrestrained. Through vigorous enforcement and education campaigns, we've lowered that number down to 48%. It's as low as it's been in my tenure in the Highway Patrol. So enforcement does work. We did not change or seek to change this law haphazardly. We studied other states who had enacted similar fine increases. We studied 4 states in particular, and just by a moderate increase in the fine, they got a positive bump in their compliance rate and lowered their fatality rate. And we think that this fine increase will do the same thing in Tennessee, and we are very optimistic that the help that we got from the General Assembly will help us to save lives. And I want to again stress, like Commissioner mentioned, this is not about raising money or paying for any budgetary item. We don't see a dime of this. We do it for one reason, because we personally care about every life that is lost on our highways. It is personal to us. It is not just a number. We talk about statistics a lot in the Highway Patrol, and we're very data driven. But every time someone dies out there on our watch, it is personal to us. And we want you to know that we care about your safety. Thank you for coming, and I'll turn it over to Kendall Poole.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Let me just a couple of shout outs really quick here. First of all, it's a pleasure to be with Colonel Trott and Commissioner Gibbons. I've been able to share many meetings, conferences, podiums with them across the state, and you won't meet 2 more passionate, dedicated individuals, and we all share the same goal. Another shout out to Steve Dillard, who is the law enforcement liaison for the Governor's Highway Safety Office. And Steve handles 25 counties with our law enforcement partners in East Tennessee. And Steve, I know you've played a big part in having this great group of men and women behind us. So thank you for everything that you do to save lives in Tennessee. And I know that Commissioner Gibbons already recognized them, but Tim Wright and Don Lindsay are here with AAA. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful partners to both the Governor's Highway Safety Office and the state. Let me tell you that seatbelts do save lives, and that's why we're here today. We have been commanded, I guess is the best way to say it, required to do an observational seatbelt survey by the federal government from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, who we get our funding from, and the Governor's Highway Safety Office. And what that survey revealed to us 2 years ago in 2014 was that we achieved an all-time high in seatbelt usage in the state of Tennessee. It was 87.7%. So that was good, but we still knew that we had work to do and we were below the national average. We had crept up year after year after year after we passed the primary seatbelt law back in 2004. So we knew we still had some work to do, but we were still at an all-time high. This year, we actually dropped 1.5 percentage points, back to 86.2%. And you say, well, maybe a percentage point and a half isn't all that much. That represents tens of thousands of Tennesseans out there. So we began talking about what we could do from the education standpoint, what we could do more from the enforcement standpoint, what we could do not only from the Highway Patrol, but involving our local law enforcement agencies who we have great partnerships with all across the state. And this is a product, this press conference is a product of what we did, and the seatbelt fine increase itself is a product of what we've done. You say, well, it's only 25 bucks, and yeah, it's still below the national average for a seatbelt fine, but you heard Colonel Trott tell you, even if you don't care about your own well-being, you're going to affect the emotions of your family, a law enforcement officer who has to go knock on the door, and you're affecting society in general. There is a cost to society in our crashes. If you go back and look at unbelted fatalities over the last 3 years, actually in 2012, the estimated cost for not wearing a seatbelt that became a fatality was $10 billion across the United States. $10 billion. And that includes lost time from work, that includes congestion costs, that includes insurance costs, that includes emergency services costs, and you can go on and on and on and on and on. Every man, woman, and child in the United States, that represents $32 per person that they paid due to those lost costs. So if it's not an emotional, personal factor for you, there's also an economic loss to the United States of America, and specifically, in this case, to the state of Tennessee. Pickup trucks continue to be our lowest usage of any type of vehicle in the state. They're 8 percentage points less than our average. And if you want to break it down a little bit further, we're talking about males in pickup trucks in rural areas. And we've got to do a better job of educating not only their drivers, but their families and everywhere. And if education doesn't work, we've got enforcement to back that up. That's how it works, hand in hand. The largest decline that we saw this year, which was really troubling to us, was vans. And when you think vans, you think families. And we think about child passenger safety when we think about families. And it's estimated that only 2 out of 10 children continue to properly be buckled up in their cars. And we're proud to have over 90 fitting stations that we help fund across the state. Many of these men and women behind me are certified technicians or instructors in properly placing those child restraint devices in the car. So that's very, very important to us. By gender, men are more likely not to wear a seatbelt than women. We know that 90% of women buckle up statewide, but only 82.5% of men buckle up. Tennesseans in urban areas are more likely to buckle up than in rural areas. About 88.4% of Tennesseans wear their seatbelts in urban areas, as opposed to 84.8% in our rural areas. So, we know that seatbelts save lives. We know that over the course of years, hundreds and thousands of lives could have been saved if we simply made the choice. Again, the seatbelt fine is not about padding the county and city coffers. That's not what we're here to do. It's not about writing more citations and reaching a quota of any type. It's about saving lives. We're on a record pace, even though we're still below the national average, and we're going to keep pushing until we get there. Do you realize over the course of the last decade that we have 1/3 less fatalities on our roadways than we did 10 years ago? It's amazing what we've been able to do together, but we've still got work to do. This year, December's not been kind to us so far as fatality numbers. And every statistic means a lot. But if December closes strong, and I know these men and women are all dedicated to making that happen, we will set a record for the lowest number of fatalities since 1962. So we're very, very proud of that. But again, we've got more work to do. One life is too many. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be glad to take any questions. I do want to do one quick thing. I want to single out one more person, and I'm going to kind of embarrass him, but that's okay. And that's Captain Jesse Brooks, who heads up the Highway Patrol's Knoxville district. Jesse, thank you for your leadership. And all I have to do is look around the room and I can see how much importance you place on partnerships with local law enforcement agencies. So, thank you. Now, questions?
Yeah, can we just move him a couple more?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, good job. Thank you all
Thank you,
very
guys.
much.
We'll look around for any individual interviews you want to do.